And good morning. It is Thursday, November 21st, 10 a.m. on the dot. My name is Ryan Belmore. I'm the owner and publisher of What's Up Noop. And we are continuing our conversations. If you missed it during all the election hoopla, we kind of rebranded all of our interviews we're doing, and we're doing Ask the series. And so what it is, it's one-on-one conversations with Newport leaders. We'll expand it as after I catch up on sleep from the election. But right now, we have series going with leaders in Newport, and every month we're chatting with the mayor of Newport, city manager, Newport school superintendent, members of Newport City Council, and this is an opportunity for folks, residents, voters, business owners in Newport to ask questions of the people of Newport and of the leaders of Newport. Joining us today for his monthly chat is Newport City Manager Colin Kennedy. Colin, how are you?
Good morning. I'm catching up on sleep too, Ryan.
I'll tell you, it was, and I was thinking about this earlier this morning. It was one of the tougher election seasons I've done in 13 years, and I was just thinking for a first-time city manager, first time in this role, and it must have been pretty eye-opening.
It was. But it was also inspiring. I mean, some of the acrimony at the national level has filtered down to local politics. That's normal. We're seeing that all around the country. But at the same time, it means everybody's expressing their opinions, and we had a great turnout, and they took those opinions to the ballot box. And I can't be more proud of our Newport residents for doing exactly that. They've spoken. I very much appreciate and respect the results, and I look forward to a great new council setting up and school committee and all the other boards and commission memberships. Those aren't elected, of course, but they'll follow behind in step. And I'm looking forward to a great new term here with our leadership.
Yeah, I mean, we've got plenty of questions in from folks today, and if people want to do that, they can do so on the social media feed that you're watching this. You can put it in the comments, or you can visit whatsupnoop.com and go to Ask the City Manager. One thing Newport residents, voters, business owners don't hold back on is sharing their opinion. And I imagine that even after the election, you're still hearing from plenty of folks.
I hear from folks just walking around town, going to restaurants, visiting various civic events that I'm invited to, and some of which I crash. but I love talking with our residents, and I think they're eager to hear now what comes next. Now that we know the results of the election, not only the council and the school committee, but also the bond measure. They're eager to know what comes next, and we're eager to get off and running on figuring exactly that out. We have a lot of ideas going in, but now that we have the information we know to start making some of those decisions, it's incumbent on us as the city staff to start incorporating that into the updated capital improvement plan and the budget process for next year. And the season for all those things is just about to start. In fact, I saw my first look at the draft capital improvement plan yesterday. And after the holidays, that will get busy with some public workshops. And that busy season of government that happens to coincide with the General Assembly meeting in Providence will get going in earnest after the holidays.
Yeah, city council members, school committee members get sworn in on December 1st. So that's when the local government changes. But what does come next? You get news with the election results that $98.5 million bond is approved. What should voters expect next? You're not going to go all spend it before Christmas.
Right, and no, we won't. What the voters have given us is the authority over the course of up to 7 years to sell up to that maximum $98.5 million in bonds. So now we have there was a pressure to get that decision solidified through the election on November 5th. Now we have time to rationally figure out what the best use of those funds are. There are allocations that are serving as our guideposts, and I expect at least early on those guideposts will be met. We have to figure out, ultimately what we want to do is probably sell bonds in no more than 2 tranches. The reason you try to minimize the sale of bonds is to save on the actual issuance costs. We don't want to burden the taxpayer with excessive issuance costs. 2 is a good number. We will wait and see a little bit longer to see if interest rates continue to trickle down a little bit, because if we don't have anything we need to start tomorrow. We have the cash flow to do anything we need to do for the next few months. So sometime in March, April, May, maybe even as late as June or July, we'll sell the first tranche of bonds, and that'll go towards the things that were urgent, most urgent, such as Parati Park, such as the beach nourishment. These are shovel-ready projects or grant application-ready projects. We'll probably sell about half when we feel like the interest rates have kind of reached their optimal level, and then go forth with, and that basically fills our coffers with those proceeds, and then we can incorporate that into the capital improvement plan and start executing those projects. Yeah, it won't happen all at once. There's a dedicated decision-making process now that kicks into gear with the capital improvement revision process. This is an annual process. We just happen to know now about the bond proceeds that will be available if we need them. And then we're being very smart for our taxpayers about exactly when we sell these and how much we sell at any given time and how often.
And I do want to point out, because I think we'll hit on it when we get to submitted questions, but even though voters supported the bond and now you have permission to move forward there, wherever you're going to spend the money in however and whenever, still has to go in front of City Council for approval again before any project actually moves forward.
Absolutely. So a good example, I just mentioned the Parati Park bulkheads and the Harbor Master building. I can't just wave a magic wand and say, here's a bunch of money. I still have to, like any budgeted project, a certain amount of bond proceeds goes into our general fund, and like any other expenditure must be and absolutely should be voted upon by council to affirm that they still agree with what they're spending on it. Also, at that point, a lot of these estimates will be in a position to give more firm numbers about what those costs actually are. Some will come in a little below, some will come in a little above, but like any budgeted item, by then we'll have a much firmer estimate about what's being spent, what's being contracted, and then go forth and do that, but explicitly only after we have the approval of council. I think that I appreciate you asking that question, because that's very important to know. I don't have some magic ability to spend $98.5 million now, nor would I. It's not my responsibility. I'm looking for the policy direction of the City Council, and I look forward to their spirited debate about exactly when and how we do these things.
Yeah, speaking of policy, I mean, I'm going to try to get this question out of my head in as much sense as possible as I can make. So these projects will all go into the capital improvement program as well as upcoming budgets. Often at City Council meetings, for any nerds who watch them like me, you'll hear, this is within the budget for items when you are spending money. So all of these projects will be put in within the budget and then matched and then approved by City Council.
Absolutely, 100% correct. A good example recently, we approved a rate study. It was a very expensive rate study that we hope in the future will help us get a better handle on how to appropriately assign water pollution control costs based on not just water usage, but things like impermeable surface area on a property. Someone who has a lot of concrete causes a lot more runoff, and et cetera, et cetera. So that rate study will help us get a handle on the most equitable way to assign those costs. But it wasn't a cheap study, but it was budgeted. And so when it came up a couple of meetings ago, it was passed very quickly. The reason it was passed very quickly is because this had been discussed as part of the budget months before. And so we weren't doing any new appropriation. We were merely approving the contract for something that had already been planned and budgeted. And a lot of these bond projects will work in similar ways. We'll solidify the contracts. The budget will approve them, or a separate vote will appropriate it, and then ultimately that contract will be signed as budgeted.
2 weeks ago, you penned a op-ed reflecting on your first 16 weeks of progress. I guess now we are at 18 weeks of progress, approximately. Personally, as a journalist, I love the transparency, and I love hearing from the city manager, and I love any time there's communication from the city. I think it benefits everybody. I'm wondering if the reasoning why you felt it was necessary to pen that, and if there's anything else to add to it after 2 additional weeks.
Yeah, the reason. Well, I'll tell you about. So the reason when and why are two different things. Why I did it is frankly because I'm really excited. I've got an amazing staff here. People told me when I came into the job that the staff here was a group of patriots like none other. That has been proven. I have seen them working hard firsthand. And we've got lots of great ideas within the staff, some of which are based on the strategic plan, some of which are more short-term goals. But I wanted to tell everybody about the city staff is working for them. It's an exciting group of people to have in your corner. And so it was important for me as the manager, kind of grouping all of some of these ideas together to kind of put them out there so people know what we're doing. So that's the why. It's mainly just, it comes from something that I found very effective in my military career, which was just, you can never say too much. So inform, educate. There is a demand signal for that in communities across the country. And so I was just excited to kind of tell people what we're doing. I love municipal work. I hope more people consider it as a career. It's a wonderful way to serve your community. That's the why. The when was very purposely. You'll notice that I put it after the election. One of my roles as an administrator is to be, with the exception of referenda, because I have ability in my code of ethics to speak on items that involve the finances of city staff and a community. But other than that, I am entirely apolitical, and I take pride in that. I don't speak about my opinions on individual council members. It's not my place. And I thought by putting out a memo like that before the election, that might have been perceived as trying to influence that. So I purposely made sure I kept that after the election so that there was no perception of any influence by me. But it had also been a while. I've been in the seat for about 4 months, and I thought, I think it's the right time that people want to hear from me. And so I thought, let's get something out there. Tell them what we've been working on without necessarily influencing their vote at the ballot box. So that's the when and the why.
I'm wondering, just kind of a personal question a little bit, but apolitical, I imagine that transforms over from your military background pretty easily. I feel like most military members are apolitical. We
all were required by rule to be. There are restrictions on military members. I say we as if I'm a retiree now. But, yeah. During my time in service, 26 years in uniform, 22 commission, that's every year we hear about the fact that, when you're representing your country in uniform, you are an agent of the federal government like any other agency. And insofar as that is the case, it's required for you to remain apolitical. And so that, that came natural to me. I also, in my spare time, people know this, I like to referee basketball. Talk about being, I'm much more comfortable being the judge than being the policymaker. I'm much more, I take pride in doing what's fair. My father was a trial court judge in Wisconsin. Same type of thing. It was an elected position, but once you're elected, you're expected to be impartial. So impartiality kind of, it's been part of my blood and my DNA, since day one. So it's something I enjoy doing, and I think it's an important role for someone in my position to have. So that's the basis of my joy for all things, impartial.
Is there a time when you're off the clock? Maybe it's just in conversation with your wife that you're not apolitical and you do share opinions, or is it sports? Do you have a outlet where you share your opinions?
Mostly at home. Yeah, that's a good question. Mostly at home. Even my social media circle is pretty limited, and that's in part because I try to keep a close hold on those things. I don't want them slipping too far into the public space because I do value the importance of that role. But do I have an outlet? Absolutely. I have some very close friends. I also have a group of other, city managers and town managers, not only in Rhode Island but nationwide. We all support each other. We're like our own support group. So I reach out to them sometimes too when I need to vent because they all get it. They're in the same boat.
There you go. Something not mentioned in your op-ed a couple weeks ago, and one of the solutions might be, which is we're going to get to, is the deputy city manager that will be joining in the new year. But I was wondering what the biggest challenge has been in the last 18 weeks. And maybe that deputy city manager fills in that hole. So I wanted to combine those questions.
So yeah, certainly my crew is going to really help with that. I'm very excited to have him on board. I will say that I just, I'm very appreciative of the outgoing city council because before I ever even interviewed for the job, they had recognized the volume that is involved in an international city the size of Newport, compared it to other communities with council manager governments, largely in other parts of the country, because we're one of the largest populations, with the exception of, I think, North Kingstown. We're the largest population with a council manager government in Rhode Island. So there aren't really good comps in Rhode Island. So they looked in other places in the country, in places like North Carolina and California and Georgia, areas that have prevalent levels of council manager governments, and saw that the sizes of the community in terms of not only the permanent residents, but the seasonal residents and the visitors, in comparable communities, almost invariably, they all had either assistant or deputy city managers. So they recognize that, and the workload here. I get about 700 emails a week when it's at peak busyness. That's I can't keep up, and so having a deputy on board is going to be great for not only helping with the workload, but also kind of doing what a lot of communities do in terms of dividing and conquering from a short-term and a long-term perspective. The deputy city manager is going to be very involved in the day-to-day operations of the staff. He'll have direct ability to communicate with and supervise employees just like I do, but the focus will be on the day-to-day operations, enhancing efficiency, and keeping the trains running on time, to coin the metaphor. And that will open the door for me to focus a little bit more on strategic thinking and relationship building, and having meetings in the community with residents, engaging not only with fellow residents, but also with members of the council and members of the General Assembly delegation, and key stakeholders in Rhode Island and federal government. So, and not to say that either of us won't be capable of doing a little bit of both of those things, but that sort of approach allows a much more efficient front office management program. And Mike, from his experience both at Salve and his experience with the Newport Police Department, brings a lot of that day-to-day operational management expertise to bear in the office. And so we couldn't be more excited to have him joining the team. I really, really, truly believe that it's going to make for a much more resident-focused front office in terms of the city of Newport residents who have a lot of questions about and requests for information from our staff.
Yeah, I've known Mike for 13, 14 years. I think he's a great hire. I don't know who the other candidates were, but knowing Mike's experience as a police officer for the city of Newport in his last almost decade, if not more, man, it's been that long, at Salve Regina University, I think he knows everybody in the city. He knows where things are, how to get into buildings. He was in a band for many years, which I hope everybody picks on him for. But I talked to him last week, and we joked when he called me, is because the only time I used to hear from him is when I forgot to include his band in listings. And I'm like, what did I forget to include your bands? But Mike is a great guy. He's a great hire. To put in the sentiment of kind of what the some of the questions out there on social media world ask is, the city has made new hires and created new positions, and is the city getting busier? Is there more things to do? Are we trying to get more efficient? Why do we need these new positions? I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but it's not being done in the past. Try to explain to me or help explain why we need why government is getting a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it's all of the above. The city is definitely busier than it ever was before. You need no further evidence than all of the visitors we had this summer. The Rhode Island Commerce already has a report out from 2023 that indicated a statewide 2% increase in tourism, and that did not take into account this past summer. That data is still being calculated and will be available next year. But we know from the great weather we had this year, and just seeing what the streets and the congestion looked like over the summer, that tourism is probably going to be up another 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5%. So it's getting busier. The need for the additional staff, what I'll do is I'll harken back to my very own interview with the city council when I talked about what's the real population of Newport. The census will tell you that it's about 25,000, but the census doesn't tell you what the seasonal residents are, and the census doesn't tell you what the visitor volume is from an equivalency standpoint. So I think I've mentioned this before, but if you take the 75,000 seasonal residents and the approximate 4 million visitors and average out their length of stay, you end up with an extra 75,000 equivalent full-time residents. In other words, that's the equivalent burden on the city's infrastructure. So really, we're like a city of 100,000 people. And the government that we had has traditionally been focused on, and the size of the staff we've had has been focused on a city of 25,000. It's not an accurate representation of all the people that we need to serve both residents and non-residents alike. And so adding not only a deputy city manager to make it more equitable with communities that have the size of population that we do, but also someone like a resilience and sustainability director who has the expertise and the experience to deal with the effects of climate change and increased storm frequency and all of the effects that is having on a coastal city. And I could go on and on, but these positions weren't just pulled out of a hat. They were well thought out by the council. Again, I'm making the hires, but I want to make sure that everybody knows the council made these choices very, very deliberately, and I would say very, very professionally, on the basis of the fact that we are an international city whose growth is exponential. And we need an appropriate sized and experienced staff to help get after some of those issues that all of that comes with.
Speaking of infrastructure, there was a great post, I think, yesterday on social media from the city of Newport of wooden pipes, wooden water pipes.
I saw that.
Check those out. But just they were used in the 1800s, but there are some thoughts or concerns that some of the pipes that are underground and the infrastructure could be just as old, still down there. So yeah.
Some of them along Bellevue Avenue, when they get pulled up, it's almost like an archaeological dig. It's pretty impressive how worn down and how corroded those pipes are. And this is, I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but this is why we have like about $260+ million worth of unassigned costs for infrastructure repair. So, we're going to eat the elephant one bite at a time. We'll start with the bond measure issues, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of these we can put together with, we can fix these on a corrective maintenance basis. But in the long run, we really need to get after this in terms of like resetting the base of the infrastructure and then making a more concerted effort in the future to apply preventative maintenance strategies so that we don't have these surprise bills that come from deferred maintenance years later. And that'll take 50 years to ultimately, get from A to Z. But like JFK said in his inaugural address, we won't be judged by the first 100 days, but let us begin, because if we don't begin, we'll never arrive. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, those and there was lots of residents got letters this week about information about the lead service lines. I don't know if you were going there with that. But I'll take it. I'll take a point of privilege here to discuss that. I received one as well at my house on Broadway. These letters went out based on federal Environmental Protection Agency regulations. For many of the phone lines at utilities have been bombarded lately. For many, they appear to be scary. I want to reassure everyone that the water that leaves the reservoirs in the city of Newport leaves that reservoir lead-free. And as it travels through the streets and the mains, it remains lead-free. The only connection it has to any lead pipes are those tiny little 1 or 1.5 inch lines that connect from the street main into the residence or into the business. So it's a very short length of pipe throughout the traversion of a molecule of water from reservoir to faucet that it actually has to go through. So the opportunity to pick up any of that lead along the way is very minuscule. Nevertheless, there can potentially be some trace amounts there. They are not considered dangerous to human consumption, but out of an abundance of caution, we want people to feel like they're getting the most pure water possible. The city is offering, for those who have been determined to have unknown or lead pipes, the city is offering filtration systems and 6 months of filters. And those are available upon request of the utilities department. So I don't want anybody to be alarmed thinking that there's this massive lead problem. This isn't like paint flecks coming off of a house. This is a very marginal amount of minuscule, we're talking parts per billion here, of small bits of lead that might come off a pipe. Still, any lead is too much, and so there is an effort to ultimately, in the long run, in the next 5 to 10 years, get to lead zero, where the city and our homeowners ultimately work together to completely remove these lead pipes from these service lines from the street to the faucet. And that effort is ongoing, and we look forward to its completion in the next decade or so. But yeah, I wanted to allay any fears that might be out there that there's this sudden poison panic in town. That's not the case. The water coming into your faucet is safe. We can mitigate that even more through some filtration provisions that we're going to offer. If nothing else, that'll give our residents peace of mind. That's very important, and we respect that. But I want people to feel safe in the drinking water that they're consuming.
Sticking with utilities for a minute, are we you're good on utility bills?
Yeah, those are stabilized. I got my bill in December, and everything was back to normal. So the credits have all been given for the September and October bills. The November bills, which is for your usage in October, those came out last week. I already paid mine. It looked perfectly reasonable and accurate. So those are stabilized, and now the next step is how do we make up for it? There's the reason that we had the sewer charge increase in the first place was trying to get after some of our capital improvement needs. Admittedly, and I pointed this out in my op-ed, admittedly, we just missed the mark on the calculation. So we corrected that. It was the right thing to do. No excuses. Just it was the right thing to do, and we did it. But going forward, we still need to figure out ways to get at that revenue. So as the budget season ramps up, we're going to have to talk about probably a sewer rate increase in the short term to start making up some of those capital losses from the rebates. And they may be across the board initially. We haven't determined that yet. I'll be having discussions with our director and general manager of utilities, Mr. Rob Schultz, in the coming months. But we'll figure out what right looks like. But again, this is all part of a short range plan to ultimately get to a more equitable rate structure in the future that doesn't just take strictly water usage into account. It's not as simple as saying what comes in must go out. That's not how stormwater works. And if we're going to keep stormwater and wastewater combined, we need to come up with a more accurate formula that puts the proper cost on the same proportional level of usage by property. So that's the long range goal. But in the near term, we need some capital support because we have this aging stuff in the ground that we need to really start to work after.
The new Newport City Council will get started on December 11th. Any chance that they'll be back at City Hall? What's the status of the elevator?
So thank you for asking. So the elevator is, we are waiting on the drive, the computer drive, to come back from the repair office in the United Kingdom. That's where it had to go. That's where the company is. And we already have the rigorous schedule, because we'll get the drive back and then we have to rig it into the elevator and rig the elevator into its seat, its base. So we have that scheduled, thinking that it's easier to turn that off than it is to turn that on. So the idea is we get the drive back in the next week or two, and then in the early part of December, we rig that into place. And ideally, the elevator is available for the first council meeting on December 11th. That's a personal point of pride for me, because I truly believe that the incoming council deserves to sit at their first council meeting in their own seats. They've earned that, and I want to be able to provide that for them. But we're at the mercy of the shipping process of the drive repair back from the United Kingdom. It's a big piece of equipment, and we have to wait till it gets here, and then we have to make sure the riggers can rig it in time. And riggers can't just be scheduled overnight. They have a lot of jobs. And so long story short, we're doing everything we can. I can't make that promise, but that has been the goal from day one, is to have that available in time for the first council meeting in December.
Let's see what we can get to for questions, comments. Kevin asks, can you ask the manager to clarify his comments on the Naval Hospital? There's been a lot of confusion as to what property will be turned over. And last was heard Navy was going to keep it and the city was getting nothing. Your thoughts, update on Naval Hospital.
I will dispel the rumor that the Navy is going to keep it. That was never the case. That was probably unintended, incorrect information. But no, the Navy is, there was that thought from a few meetings ago that the War College might be trying to use some of that property. That may or may not be true. It depends on ultimately what the final version of their document is. But more important, speaking with the president of the War College and the mayor, there's no misunderstanding that property will be conveyed to the city of Newport. Then what we do with it, which may or may not include leasing it back to the Naval War College or perhaps a developer, that will be determined later. But we are getting that property one way or another. We are in discussions right now with the Navy's Base Realignment and Closure Commission, but also the landowner, which is Commander Navy Region Mid-Atlantic. They're based in Norfolk, Virginia. So we have to work through both of those agencies on on the scoping the environmental challenges of getting that site ready for transfer and conveyance to the city of Newport, and then ultimately the timing therein. And there are various ways and various levels of risk depending on when and how we're able to get that property. We have to make the best decision for the city, and we're still working through that because the scope of the environmental restoration is still being determined. Actually, they're working on that as we speak. They being Region Mid-Atlantic and the Base Realignment and Closure Commission. They should have a report to us sometime in December or January, which will indicate how long they think that environmental abatement would take. At a minimum, they're probably talking about 2 years, perhaps longer. If it's going to take longer and we want the property sooner, there are some options that we can look into. They may involve assuming some risk on the city's part, but if we do that, we'll make sure that that risk is acceptable risk. We don't want unacceptable risk, but like anyone who's interested in moving the ball forward, sometimes there are acceptable risks that you can assume. So we'll have those discussions with the council at a later date. But to answer your broad question, that property will be conveyed from the Navy to the city of Newport. Our main goal with that property, if we get nothing else out of it, is public access to the waterfront. That's really, really super important for our North End residents to have an easier pathway to take advantage of the wonderful waterfront and harbor that we have here in Newport. Everything else is gravy. That includes the buildings, what becomes of them, whether we renovate them, whether we lease them to a developer, whether we subsection it off to a developer. All of which, of course, will be encompassed in the broader North End urban development plan. But all of that is secondary to the waterfront access that is so vitally important to the members of our community.
A lot of property questions. Folks must know what really grinds my gears sometimes, because when people ask about private property, sometimes I don't think they understand that the city only has so much role in. Elaine asks, is anything ever going to be done about the old casino building and property? And I'm going to add on, at what point can a city step in with a private property such as a casino or such as the Opera House and say, hey, you need to do something here?
Yeah, there are definite, it's zoned for commercial use, so there are definite limits by right to what the city can ask for that to be done. Certainly, if I'm the property owner and I purchase that property, at some point, market dynamics will dictate that I don't want to sit and pay taxes on something that's not generating any revenue for too long. So we expect some movement on that in the future. I won't say near future or distant future. We just don't know when it comes to the casino property. We think it'll be sooner rather than later. I would also say that likely, and I haven't talked to the developers and the property owner personally, but likely the pandemic slowed down some of their plans, as it did for lots of land ownership issues around the country. But I do believe we're getting closer to getting started on that. The city can't just, without a good rationale, can't just take that away. And even if we wanted to, we'd have to pay a fair market value for that property, and it's probably a higher price than the city would want to pay. We can't just get it for pennies to the dollar. It doesn't work that way. We have to pay a fair market price, and that would be exceedingly high. So we're depending on the developer to ultimately try to make a profit off of that property and do so in a way that meets our requirements. I know we're interested in asking on things like mixed-use development along with any commercial development, so that we can get housing out of that area as well as what the landowner wants to do. I don't want to speak too much further into that because there might be future discussions and litigation, and by litigation I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean that in a positive way. Discussions about the most appropriate use for that property that also meet the landowner's development interests. So, but I think we can strike a good balance, and I'm optimistic about that, and I look forward to those discussions with the ownership group going forward.
One more specific property question. Judy asks, what is the status of the city's proposed redevelopment of Cogshell School for moderate income workforce housing? And 3 more paragraphs as part of that question, but give me an update on the Cogshell School.
So Cogshell School, that has still been, it's been subject to some ongoing litigation that I think we're on the cusp of bringing to a conclusion. I can't speak too much in too much more detail than that because I would be violating the privileges of executive session with the council because it's an ongoing matter. But I think we're getting close, and ultimately the city still does want to use that for housing, and that will be the ultimate end state. It's just a matter of making sure that we close any potential loopholes. So we could say we want workforce housing until we're blue in the face, but if we don't make sure that all the loopholes are closed, we ultimately may not achieve that. So that's what the discussion is about right now, and I think we're very close to coming to an amicable solution with the developer, and then we'll be able to move forward. So it's taken a little longer than anyone would have hoped, but it's more important to get it right than to rush in and find out you did it wrong and then have no recourse. So we're making sure we get it right for our community, and I think we're going to see some movement on that here very shortly, within the next few months.
Excellent. This one might just be more of a reminder of what has happened with ordinances as well as recent city council meetings. Two questions, I'll combine them. What is being done to restrict guest house owners from using their residential guest passes so their clients can park on residential streets? So parking passes, I know the city council spoke about that. And the other one was what progress has been made on addressing significant number of seasonal rentals. So just a recap, reminder of what city council has been working on with parking passes as well as seasonal rentals. Yeah,
so parking passes as it pertains to short-term rentals, accessory dwelling units and short-term rentals, that's pretty much in effect now. There was a restriction that was placed that said if you want to have one of these units, you have to provide parking. But providing parking doesn't necessarily mean on the property itself or in the street. According to professional zoning board standards, there are suitable alternatives that can be found. And so some residents are leasing parking nearby for some of those residents. That's allowing the zoning board to make some of these approvals. Now, I know that doesn't make everybody happy, but I do want to say that the zoning board of approval, they are a very, very professionally oriented board. They take all emotion out of decision making and go strictly based on professional and state supported zoning standards. And one of those standards is if feasible alternative options can be found to various regulations and barriers, that they give those due consideration and approve them when prudent. And so that's what they've been doing in a few of those cases. I will say that when it comes to short-term rentals, there's some litigation right now in the city of Narragansett that we're looking at very closely, as is the rest of the state and the General Assembly, because there are some fair challenges that are being made by plaintiffs to some of these short-term rental regulations. And so, as some of these things work themselves out in court, we want to make sure we don't get ahead of that and put ourselves in a position where we could later be sued ourselves. And so. We're watching that case very closely because it bears a lot of similarities to ours. It's not entirely similar, but it bears some similarities. And we would be foolish not to watch that case develop and see what the ultimate determinations are made, both at the court level and at the appellate level, to determine what the ultimate outcome is. So that's parking as it pertains to things like short-term rentals and ADUs. Parking in general, we look forward to our next workshop with the council. We had one right now on the resident parking sticker program. And we got lots of great feedback from the council. We're incorporating some of that and hope to have another meeting on that in maybe January with the new council, so that ultimately we can have a new policy set up that is more fair and equitable for things like guest passes and contractor use, and how do we enforce residential parking and who's eligible and how many vehicles are they eligible for any given person or property. So all of those questions are being worked out, and I look forward to a really comprehensive overhaul of that program once we complete getting our information from the council. That was parking. What was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
It was short-term rentals, which you had addressed.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it. I just want to take a moment, and you mentioned workshops, and I want to encourage people to participate in the workshops when they're scheduled, but also city commissions and boards. If you're passionate about something, if you have knowledge, background, or if you just want to get knowledge or background on something, join a city commission board. The city always needs volunteers to serve on these, and you can make changes. You can help influence changes in the city.
Absolutely. We have several openings right now in our various boards and commissions, and it's a great way to get involved in your community. These are wonderful volunteers that we have that meet usually no more than once a month. In an open meeting to talk about the various issues that are on their agendas, but whether it be Tree and Open Space or Historic Cemetery Commission or Cliff Walk Commission or Waterfront Commission, Public Sculpture Commission, there's several of them. If you have an area of expertise or interest and you want to participate, it's a great way to be involved in your community, and we're looking forward. Check out our website. We have a whole page dedicated to our boards and commissions and a list of them. And if you're interested in joining one of those, you can I believe it's L. Jackson at City of Newport.
And Colin, tap your computer. If you just moved your computer, you knocked your audio out a little bit.
Am I back up?
I can hear you, but you're breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We're right up against the schedule, anywho. But let me see.
If any of that got missed, I apologize. But basically, our coordinator for all of our boards and commissions is the mayor's assistant. That's Ms. Lisa Jackson. She will be happy to take any inquiries. I think it's L. Jackson at cityofnewport.com. And if you're interested in serving, she's excited to hear from you and would love to get you on the list of folks to be considered.
Excellent.
Colin,
anything
we did
41 minutes. I asked you if there's anything that you wanted to talk about.
I'm looking. I came with a bunch of. I know we talked about the deputy city manager. Super excited to have him on board. We talked about the op-ed that I posted, and I think we also talked about the capital improvement plan, which I've seen the first draft of. So yeah, that's coming up. Like any capital improvement plan, it's a wish list, and we'll have to pare it down. The initial draft came in with about $8 million worth of things that our various boards and divisions want, and we'll probably have room for about 3 or 4 of that. And some of the other lesser priority things will have to get pushed off into future years. But that's a normal process of any capital improvement plan. And that's stuff that's independent of what we've already know to be available to get done through the graciousness of the voters with the bonds. So I'm very, very thankful to the residents of Newport. What I told some of the neighborhood commissions when I met with them is that I asked them to kind of take a look at themselves 50 years in the future. Heck, a lot of us probably won't even be here anymore in 50 years. But put yourself 50 years out and look back at your kids and your grandkids and wonder what they would ask if you said, boy, am I glad that Newport thought about the future or not? And I think resoundingly the voters said we really appreciate the fact that our children and grandchildren will thank us for having thought about the future. And I'm very, very flattered by that. I'm very touched that the community is showing that support. So my commitment and our staff commitment and our council commitment going forward is to be absolute efficient stewards of that revenue, to pay it off as soon as possible, to make the most optimal use of it as possible, because that's what we owe our taxpayers for the vote of confidence that they've given us. And so I really sincerely appreciate that, and look forward to doing great things with that revenue.
Action items. Anything you need from residents, business owners?
Not at this time.
Okay. Perfect. Thanksgiving. Any event? Anything going on that people should know about?
No, I would say that we're excited that, given the great weather we've been having, we're excited to continue to receive a steady stream of visitors and shoppers and some of our various businesses around the community that sell some wonderful gift packages. I would say think local. Don't just leave it for Small Business Saturday. We've got some amazing, wonderful small businesses here in Newport that are wonderful places to shop for great Christmas gift ideas and holiday gift ideas. And so with the great throughput we've had all summer, with the continued good weather we're having, relatively today's notwithstanding, I really look forward to having a great throughput of folks helping our economy here in Newport, and also doing some great services for some of our small business owners as well. So I would urge our residents to consider that when you're thinking about your gift and shopping ideas for the holiday season.
Favorite Thanksgiving side dish?
Ooh, strawberry rhubarb.
What?
Yeah, it's a Midwestern thing. I love it.
Okay. That's my wife. She's from Missouri.
Pumpkin is a close second, but I love a strawberry rhubarb pie. It's my great weakness in life.
Okay. Is there any good any restaurants?
Ooh, I would never single out one. That wouldn't be fair of me as the manager. They're all wonderful. Yeah, honestly, if sometimes when I get ideas for new places to try out when I'm watching city council meetings and looking through vittling license lists. Yeah. That's so every time a license comes through, I'm like, oh, I should try that place. So if you're looking for some ideas, just look on a docket. You'll find some good ones.
December 14th, Army versus Navy, or don't care?
Oh, go Navy, beat Army. I'm sorry. That's one area of partiality I can express.
Yeah. I've met some military members who are like, I don't care about that. That's a big
No, I'm an actual Naval Academy graduate, so I'm contractually obligated to say, "Go Navy, beat Army."
There you go. All right. Well, City Manager, I appreciate you taking so much extra time with us today.
Thank you very much, Ryan. It's always a pleasure. I don't mind if we go long. This is fantastic.
Yeah, and we will chat next on December 18th, 10 a.m. right now. Scheduling might change that, but that's when we will chat with you right before the holidays.
Sounds great. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. That is Newport City Manager Colin Kennedy. We appreciate him taking 45 minutes with us today to chat about all that is happening in the city. If you have any questions, comments for the city manager, you can email them to me at ryan@whatsupnewp.com. You can go on whatsupnewp.com and submit them under Ask the City Manager. If you missed any portion of this conversation, you can go back and watch it on social media as well as on whatsupnewp.com. Yesterday, we had the school superintendent, Colleen Burns-Germain, on with us, so you can go and watch that as well. And once we get this new city council elect and school committee elect sworn in on December 1st, we'll start up the conversations with those leaders and those members in December. If you missed any portion of this program, want to watch it again, want to share it, all available on whatsupnewp.com. Thanks for watching. Thank you for submitting your questions, and thank you for reading. Talk to you next time.